Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We've had a terrific amount of interest for this one, which has been fantastic to see. Over half of you can see have become regulars now, which is terrific. But for those that are new, big welcome, and we're delighted to have you as we host another block management masterclass, this time exploring how you can beat the competition online. For those of you that don't know your SEOs from your PPCs, don't worry, we're going to be covering off the basics of digital marketing first. We'll be briefly talking through the pros and cons of the different ways that you can market yourself online. But then we're going to quickly build into more actionable insights and tips on how you can all become better digital marketeers. But before we get underway, some basic housekeeping for those that are joining us for the first time. So as is customary, all participants, at least those of you without a speaking role, have been placed on mute so that the audio is nice and clean. However, that obviously doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. Quite the contrary. Please send us your questions via the Q&A button on Zoom. We'll do our best to answer as many of those as possible towards the end. There'll then be a short survey at the end so that you can leave comments on whether or not you found this helpful, if you'd like to see the series continue, and if so, any areas in particular you'd like us to explore next time. So jumping into it again, so why did we feel this was a great subject to tackle? It's really thanks to our guests today from Raw, the digital marketing agency and Google certified partner, who quite astutely uncovered that very few block management companies have really woken up to the idea of digital marketing still. And the ones that have are effectively dominating the results pages on Google as a result. And that's obviously generating more leads and customers for them than their competitors, which I think we all agree is particularly important at the time, during these strange times as networking and face-to-face rapport building has become very challenging. And digital marketing has really become the essential way to get your message across to RMC directors and be seen in general. So, very quick disclaimer before I hand things over. Hopefully this should go without saying considering the subject matter, but you can never be too careful. All content presented in this webinar is intended for general purposes only and should not be considered as legal advice or official guidance. And on that note, I'm going to hand things over now to Adam and Jack to introduce themselves and give us their guided tour through digital marketing.
Hi everyone, as you can see, my name's Adam Parish and I'm the Managing Director of Raw, and I'm here with my colleague Jack Mills, the Commercial Lead. Say hi, Jack.
Hi everyone.
And yeah, I mean, those are two quite bad profile pictures. I'm quite glad that I think they missed an opportunity to mirror one of them so we could be staring into each other's eyes there. But
it looks like an album cover. I like it.
It does a bit. Looks like we're looking out to the sea or something.
So, wonder what we're both looking at.
Well, we'll never know. But anyway, we're very happy to be here. So thank you for inviting us. Just in terms of a bit of background, in terms of who Raw are, we're a digital agency based in London, or at least we were pre-COVID. We're all remote now and hopefully back in London soon. We tend to specialize in two areas. So we specialize in digital marketing, which is obviously what we're talking about today. So that's all your SEO and PPC and all that kind of stuff. But we also do web design and web development. And there's a particular focus across the business in the property sector. I'd say almost 60 to 70% of our business tends to be in the property arena, particularly with traditional estate agents. Like, for example, we're currently in the process of building and designing the Connells Group websites. We probably have over, I mean, Jack probably tell me better, but probably over 30 estate agents that we do PPC with. And like James said, we've kind of looked at the block management sector for a while, and a number of our existing more traditional agents have actually started doing some work with us in the block management sector, where kind of their campaigns have just evolved into looking at that, and we found it actually works quite well. So we got talking to our friends at Fixflow, and having worked with them in the past, particularly on the website side of things, we kind of, like James said, identified that there's a bit of a need in terms of looking at digital marketing here. And with some of our technology and our market intelligence that we're going to run through, we're hoping to sort of this be the start of a bit of a partnership, and whether that's doing some more webinars or whether that's actually releasing some of this information and data, but quite an exciting move really for us. So I'm now going to try and share my screen so we can start the actual presentation. Just hold 2 moments. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see my screen. So today the topic is how to beat the competition online, and obviously that's quite a big and wide-ranging topic, and I'm sure you all don't want to be here for 6 or 7 hours going through every aspect of online potential. So we've focused it to start with at what is essentially search marketing, which is a bit of a posh name for saying it's basically Google search. So it's when somebody goes onto Google, they carry out a search, and then it's those results pages that you see, and it's trying to be as dominant as possible across those results and trying to cover as many of those kind of results. So what we're going to do today is just talk about the basics, and then talk about how to sort of benchmark your performance and how to look at how you're doing, and then potentially start exploring ways in which you might start improving things. And Jack's going to talk a bit more about some practical steps from a PPC perspective on what you might be able to do to improve your coverage. So in terms of an introduction, what is search engine marketing? The official definition is a form of marketing that involves promotion of sites and visibility across a search engine page. That's kind of a big mouthful of saying, like I said before, it's when somebody does a Google and you get a search page. And on this page, we've got an example of the guy in the top right. Looks a bit cold, called him Mr. Winter. He's doing a pretty common kind of search, which is type in block manager near me. And then we've got the lady at the bottom who's doing a search, which is block management in Bristol. And you get something that looks a bit like this. Everybody would have seen this. It's a pretty standard Google search page, and we're going to go into a bit more detail about what that means and how it works. So those that are a bit eagle-eyed will have noticed that I'm kind of referring to it as Google, and strictly speaking, search engine marketing does cover all the different search engines, so all the Microsoft, etc., but Google are so dominant. I mean, there's no official stats, but there's so many different stats all over the place in terms of how dominant they are. And it's probably something like 90% of searches are conducted over Google. And they've become kind of the term associated with searching. Like you don't necessarily say you're doing a search, you say you're going to Google something. So I'm going to refer to Google going forward, but the other search engines are relevant, but they tend to just follow whatever Google do anyway. So in terms of a bit more about search engine marketing, and particularly the search engine page, what happens is when somebody does a search, it will go off to Google, and then it'll go into Google's fancy algorithm, and they'll determine what the best result is, both in terms of what results are at the top, but in terms of what the kind of results that they return. And if anybody's as sad as me and is really into this kind of stuff, there's some great videos around. Actually, if you Google how Google works, seems a bit backwards. There's some videos that Google put up that talk all about that, and they're really interesting actually. But in terms of today, the most common kind of search is this one that we're showing here, and this one is what's called like a local search. So it's when Google are returning the best results it considers to be in that locality. So in this example, someone searched block management near me, and you can see at the top you have this block of 4 adverts. So they're what we call the paid slot, and that's essentially your PPC. Then a bit further down, you tend to have a map block. So typically it's filled with 3 kind of local listings that are close to where that search was either conducted or where the search name was in the actual original search box. And then you have the organic listings, which tends to be 10, can be 11, can be 12, but you get the idea. And then you have a block of paid listings at the bottom. Now, obviously you can conduct this kind of search on all sorts of devices. So in this example, we've got a mobile next to it, and you can see this is exactly the same search, exactly the same time. It's essentially the same results, a little bit redacted, a little bit simpler. Those that are eagle-eyed will notice there are a few differences. Like for example, it's a bit of a different order from a PPC perspective. You have Crabtree on desktop, but you don't on mobile. You have PMMS on mobile, but not desktop. And that's probably because those companies are focusing more on certain devices. So Crabtree might be focusing on, let's go back to this. So it's where you get trying to be too fancy with your presentation. Crabtree are focusing more on desktop, whilst PMMS are focusing more on mobile. And if you go down, it's a similar story. You know, it's pretty much the same organic, but there's a little bit of difference. So drivers, I think, are in 4th spot here. There were 6 spot hits on mobile. They're probably not as optimized on mobile, but you get the idea. There's a little bit of change. So that's the basic of a search page. So the big question then really is why care about that? What's the importance of really sort of monitoring this and thinking about this? And you know, I guess the true answer is you don't have to care, but the reason that we think you should care is the fact that it's pretty indisputable that clients and prospective clients use search engines and Google to look for services, and particularly your services. And I think there's a stat where something like over 90% of local people looking for a local service will start with Google. And it's a trend that's really changed over the last 20 years. You can see this graph on the left-hand side from The Economist, where you can see from an advertising point of view, digital has just exploded, whilst more of the traditional means like newspaper and magazine have really dived off a cliff. And that's just a representation of the fact there's been a change in behavior of where prospective clients are in terms of their use of technology to find services. The next kind of important part of this is what we call intent marketing. And what we mean by this is all marketing tends to sit somewhere in this funnel. And like, for example, if you were marketing with a big billboard outside, you'd be right at the top of this funnel, because say you're advertising insurance, a lot of people walk by, most people have no interest in insurance at that time, but there might be 1 in 2,000 people that has some kind of awareness. The great thing about search marketing is in most cases, people call out, they want your specific service at that point. So they say, I want to change block manager or compare block managers, and it's right down this intent funnel. So you're getting at people at the point of need, which is the real advantage over other forms of marketing. And the final 2 points, it's also really trackable. Like, you know, if you're making improvements on PPC or on organic, you can see there's an increase in traffic. You can monitor what goes on your website in terms of what happens in filling in forms. You can set conversion events. It's just a really trackable, good return on investment type approach. And then the final thing is, which kind of encompasses all 3 of them, is if you're not doing it, your competitors will be. And excuse me, just get some water. You could be like the best company, like the biggest and best with the best reputation. I'm sure you'll get plenty of business. But if you're not visible on these searches, others will be taking these leads. So that's the kind of introduction. So in terms of the next section, it's more about sort of outperforming and benchmarking where you're at. So you've got to think about, so one thing is sort of understanding the need. The next thing is actually working out what you need to be actually benchmarking on and looking at where you need to improve. So the main part of that is search terms. So put very simply, search terms is what you enter in Google. It's that search you carry out, and it's those that you're targeting. And you know, search terms is quite an advanced kind of topic. Like, for example, on the property sector, we've spent 5 years building up a big library of search terms on the PPC side of things, and that's like really our part of our IP. And organic and SEO is kind of similar. You have your target search terms, and you know, that's your experience, but it's not that hard really. And what I would suggest anybody that's quite new to this is start basic. You know, start with 5 or 10 search terms. They're usually quite obvious, and they're usually you know, that's the best way to start. And what we suggest doing is to use kind of 3 areas to look across for search terms. So think geography. So think in terms of what's your target region, like where are you looking to sell your services? In most cases, it won't be nationally. It'll be like set across certain regions. Like it might be a city plus a certain mile radius, but write that down. And then think about what your services are. So they're likely to be block management, but there might be some ancillary sort of surrounding services too. And think about who your target customers are. So like, are you looking for people that have like 5 or 6 properties, or are you looking at big commercial organizations? Because all these 3 factors will impact the kind of selection for search terms. So we've come up with this false company, our little fake block management company, and obviously copyright hasn't been considered for this, so please don't look at it too closely. But for this little company, Block Management RS, we're going to pretend that they're looking for clients in the block management arena in Birmingham. So if we were to take these 3 areas of search terms to look at, we might come up with a list, something like this. And there's 2 types of search term here, just to explain quickly. There's the ones that actually include a place name. So like block management Birmingham, that's very clearly someone's looking for block management in Birmingham. So it kind of doesn't matter where you're searching for that. You could be searching for it in London, but you're clearly wanting that service in Birmingham. Or there's search terms that are more general, like block management near me, or good block managers, or that kind of thing. And the challenge with those kind of search terms is you don't really want people that are sitting in London that are looking for that service in London. You want people that are looking within Birmingham. So what you have to do for that is consider the geography of where they're at. So from a PPC perspective, you can just market to people that are sat within Birmingham. And from an SEO perspective, you can just look at results based on as if you were sat in Birmingham. But you can see the kind of search terms we've got here: block management near is good block manager, etc. And if my advice to you, if you were starting this, I'd start quite basic. So start with like block management and the biggest place name you're targeting. Start with like the near me type ones. All these kind of things are a good way to see where you're sitting compared to your competitors. And there's some good resources out there to help you with this process of looking for keywords, but kind of finding keywords and search terms is only really the start of it, because you could have the most interesting and fantastic search terms, but if nobody's actually searching on them, it's all a bit pointless. So these tools are also very good for actually looking what the volume is and where the volume sits on the different terms. And the thing to bear in mind is that I'm sure you all know that block management, there's not a huge amount of people every month looking for this service. It's there's only so many. So the volumes aren't going to be high, but you've got to try and cover as much as possible. And it's kind of like that fishing net thing. The wider you spread it, the more chance you've got of collecting those potential clients, and obviously they've got a huge potential end value to you. Excuse me. And then there's all sorts of advanced targeting you can do as well. I'm not going to go through it today. This is more on the PPC side of things, but if anybody's interested and wants to go into any more detail afterwards, I'm more than happy to do so. But it's things like lookalike audiences and people that have got certain interests, all that sort of thing. So you've now got your search terms. You've selected your 5, 10, 20 search terms that you're interested in, seeing how you do. And the next step really is then benchmarking your performance, so actually tracking how you're doing. And there's lots of different ways to do this. So from an organic perspective, tools like, there's a tool called Ahrefs that's very good that we use, where you can plug in all your keywords and it shows you how you're ranking. You can put in your locations, and that's very good. It shows changes in traffic and things like that. But also, if you just want to do it a lot more basically, get an Excel spreadsheet, set a reminder every 2 weeks, carry out a search, see what's going on. The one thing to bear in mind, you have to make sure everything's the same. So make sure, it's probably better to do it in incognito mode. Make sure your cookies aren't impacting you too much. Make sure your location's the same. But that allows you to keep an eye on what's going on. The thing you need to check is it's not necessarily all about where you're sitting and where you're ranking. It's also about then what's happening with traffic. You should be expecting to see an increase in traffic. You should then be carefully tracking what's going on your site. So what's happening when people land, and what people are doing. Are they going and filling out forms? Are they calling you? Are they actually turning into leads, which is ultimately the goal for all of this. And then the third part that I want to discuss is then sort of making sense of it. So you're tracking the rank, you're tracking the traffic, all that stuff. It's all great, but then it's making sense of what you're trying to do on a search page. And a few years ago, we started sort of coming up with the concept of trying to rank searches. And what I mean by that is, so for each individual search in a location is a potential opportunity. And what we do is we rank how well each company is doing for each one of those opportunities. And so what we do is we carry out that search, and then we look at the page and we look at where they are. And obviously, if they're not there at all, they've got no coverage. If they're there, but perhaps they're in the bottom of the page slots, at the bottom of the page down here, or maybe they're sort of 4th place onwards organic, they're there, but it's only really partially there. They're only going to get so much throughput of traffic. So we call that partial. But then if you're top 3 organic, or if you're on the map or the page, we're pretty confident you're going to get a decent flow of traffic. So we call that full coverage. And just to show you kind of what that practically means for our pretend company here, Block Management RS, if they were looking at 3 search terms, so you have Block Management Birmingham, you have Block Management companies near me, and Block Management, there's the 3 search terms here. So in the example on the right hand side, say we've got block management companies near me, we're pretending that they're second in the slot of PPC. So we'd be quite happy that they're covering that search, they're getting a decent traffic through. You can always put a tick in it, move on kind of thing. The middle one, block management, they're not there at all. They're not on any of the organic, they're not in the paid. That is definitely an opportunity. So in order to get some traffic through from that, they need to rethink their strategy. That might be improving organic, or it might be starting to do a bit of PPC. Now this final one here, they're right down on organic. So they're in the 9th slot of organic. So that's where we would count it as being partial. And I kind of wanted to illustrate why we think that's partial. And to do that, if I zoom up here, this is essentially what you see when you carry out a search. You see this big sort of window. And when I do this kind of presentation to people, I often say, well, what do you notice? And most people will quickly notice the whole window's full of adverts. And Google do this for a reason. They want people to click on ads. They want to make their money. So they deliberately fill that first screen up. And Google have been doing a really good job over the years of trying to hide the fact these are adverts. So like back in the day, they used to be on the side. They used to have a different background. They were clearly ads. Nowadays, the only really discernible change is the fact there's this little ad sign. And I think the stats out there that say that potentially up to 50% of people don't even recognize them as ads anymore. And they're also very, they're very insightful in terms of they're meant to be highly useful to the search. Therefore, they do draw clicks. So for this guy here, the guy with the little head, if he's looking for block management in Birmingham, he's typed this search, and assuming he has no brand bias, which obviously is a bit of a leap, but on that basis, he gets this search page. So the first result he gets is this nice big advert with these extensions underneath from Remus, and he's likely to click on that and likely to go through that. But if the guy is sensible and it's quite a big service to sign up to, he's going to do his research. So he's then going to come down a bit, and then you've got 3 more options here. So you've got Canberra management, you've got Nicholas George, and you've got Blocksphere, all of which he may decide to click through and have a look at their services. Then you get to the next full window, and the next full window is pretty much taken up by the map listing. And it's a similar story on mobile as well. And you've got the 3 options here, and these tend to draw fair few clicks, so you might decide to go and click through on those. But assuming he gets past that, you then get to the next full window, and you start to get your organic results. And those that are eagle-eyed out there will notice that you've got Nicholas George here that's top of the organic, but they were actually also in the paid listings here. So they're almost doubling up. They're getting the throughput from PPC, but they're also right at the top of this organic listing here. But yeah, so this guy may click in here, he may go to Scannons, he may go to Cottons, down to Home Point. You kind of off this top 3 cliff then. It's pretty well known in the industry that once you get past the top 3, there's not many clips to be had after that. So you're down at Home Point, down at KWB, 2 listings, Block Management UK Limited are there, Compass Block Management, and then you're down to our fake little company here. So they've essentially had to get past 15 different options before they get down to this point, 13 different businesses. So you can see the challenge that potentially is there if you're not at the top of these listings, whether you're using PPC or optimizing your organic. So that's that. And the final part of the benchmarking performances is a little bit of a self-pitch. We've tried not to do too much of that for this webinar, but this is the company report on the market intelligence that James referred to earlier, which is something that we've started to work with Fixflow on, that we've been working on in different sectors. And what this little bit of technology allows us to do is to basically see what's going on in a sector. So we carry out a number of searches. So in this case, there's 5 different search terms here on the left-hand side. So we use like block management and location name changes, good leasehold managers, and et cetera, et cetera. And we carry out those 5 different searches across 6,000 different locations across the country, particularly in England and Wales. So as if you were sitting in those locations carrying out those searches. And what we do is we collect all the paid listings, we collect all the map listings, and we collect all the organic listings. And the reason we do that is to understand what's going on and who's dominant in what places. But where I think it gets most interesting is this part. So it's then we can then turn that data into a market insight report. And there's lots of other pages that we're not showing you here for this, where it's like benchmarking of like ranking tables and all sorts of good stuff. But but the best part of this is we're able to take, so in this case, it's hard, an example in the traditional sector, but we were able to sit down with you and work out what are your target locations and refine the report to those target locations. And then we're able to basically plot on a matrix how you're doing. So in this case, the top left is they've got 122 different searches. They've got full organic and full paid, and vice versa. You can see all the different options. Most important is probably the bottom right, where you've got over 6,000 different searches where they have no coverage. And what this report does is then it tries to provide some insight and actionability. So it calls out all the different searches and locations where they have no traffic acquisition, so good opportunities to start turning it on. There's then the ones that have got partial, which are pretty good targets because they tend to be easy wins. So you're already there organically perhaps, or you're at the bottom of PPC, a bit of tweaking, a bit of improving, you're likely to get a disproportionate impact and uplift. There's then the area where you want to preserve performance. This means that you're getting all your performance through PPC, and to make sure you realize that, because if you suddenly change your PPC budget or turn it off, you might lose a significant amount of traffic. And the final bit is these are the ones where you've got great coverage with PPC and great coverage with organic, a bit like the Nicholas George example earlier, where if budgets are tight, you may decide to calm down the PPC on that and reallocate it to other budgets. But as I said, this is quite a new thing for us in this sector, but what we're offering is anybody that's on this webinar, watching it now or watching it a bit later, as a bit of an early bird kind of offer. If anyone's interested in this information for their own company or would like this insight, if they contact us afterwards, we'd be happy to sit down with them and put this information together as a bit of a pilot for us. So please do get in touch afterwards if you would like that. So the final two sections that I was going to run through quickly is I just wanted to quickly talk about the differences between local and national search. And there's a reason that this is important. So in this example, we have this guy in the top right again, who's doing block managing near me searches and block management in Bristol. Very, very clearly, that's a local search. He's looking for services near him. It doesn't take a genius to work it out. The lady at the bottom, it's not so clear. So her search is a good block manager or property managing agents. And all these searches go off, they go into the Google algorithm, and then Google then decides what the best results are. Are the best results that are close by, or are the best results the national results? And when I say national, that means that everybody's getting the same organic results that they consider the best. So in terms of showing you what happens, so for the guy at the top, no great surprise, they get a local result, which is the same as the kind of structure that I've showed you before. The big important thing to realize here is it hugely varies. So if here in this example, at the bottom, if you're sitting in SW11, you're likely to get very different results to if you're sitting in SW12, to if you're sitting in SW10. It completely varies depending on where you're at. And that's an important point to take really in terms of when you're benchmarking and understanding what you're doing. You need to test in these different areas. And actually, we're able to create URLs for you to do that. So if afterwards, again, you want to do some testing in different geographies you're targeting, reach out to us and we can send you some URLs for you to do that. But the reason that we know there's such differences is back to our market intelligence tool. It's carried out almost 29,000 searches, and that ended up showing us that there was over 5,400 different companies that appeared organically across those searches. So it shows you the huge diversity in terms of what occurs for this kind of local searches. Now it's a very different picture on the national search. And so for those kind of searches that I showed you that the lady did, what happens is no matter where you're sitting in the country, the same organic results are returned. So, and again, we can prove that via our market intelligence tool. So for the 28,000 different searches, there was only 19 different organic companies that were found, of which you can see these top 5, 6, 7, 8 are pretty much locked out the results. There's a little bit of difference at the bottom, but not much, not notable. It's pretty much the same. Wherever you're sitting, you're going to get those same results. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because these can often be really good search terms. Like, again, I think more into the traditional estate agency sector. Some really common search terms are things like, I want to value my house, or how much is my house worth? Those kind of things with lots of intent. They tend to be national search terms, so they don't differ, as in you get the same organic results. So unless you're one of these top 10, 15 companies, you are not going to access that search term and that great traffic unless you use PPC, because PPC does change no matter where you're at. So it's important to sort of recognize those search terms and use PPC to kind of plug those gaps. So the final part before I hand over to Jack that I just wanted to tie everything up. So there's this whole SEO v PPC thing of, you know, what should you do? Where should you focus? Where should you sort of essentially spend your marketing budget? And from our perspective, we don't think it's right to say you should be doing one or the other. They both have a value, and they both have slightly different pros and cons. And really, if you're truly trying to maximize search coverage, you need to consider both. Like, we think SEO is particularly good at focusing on your core offering. So anything that your website's all about. So, you know, if you're just block managers, focus on block managers. If you're based in Birmingham, that's going to be great for SEO because your website's going to say Birmingham all over it, and you can focus like keywords such as these, so block management Birmingham, block management near me, or Saltley, which is a place in Birmingham. They're great for organic. PPC, however, is great for the other things. So it's great for filling in search coverage gaps. So a bit like what I showed you earlier, if you've got gaps, you can turn that straight on and fill those gaps. Maybe you're looking for extra traffic. Maybe you're looking for new secondary targets. So perhaps a non-core part of your business that you haven't got that SEO and organic traction for. It's great for targeting those, accessing the national searches, which I just showed you, or maybe some short-term exposure. So the kind of search terms for PPC could be maybe landlord compliance help. So something that is kind of a parallel, but maybe not where you rank so well organically, or maybe something like an EICR certificate where it's a certain thing that you have to deliver. But again, there'll be other people that perform better organically, but it may be a good juncture to say, well, have you considered using block management, for example? Or maybe different areas like you want to target outside of Birmingham, like Worcester, Coventry. Your website's not necessarily focused on that. So PPC is great to turn on and access those kind of areas. So really, to conclude, I just want to sort of say that from a cost perspective, there's kind of a misconception that SEO is the free one and PPC is the expensive paid one. And you know, I'm not going to tell you that PPC isn't more expensive than SEO. It probably is because you've got all the media spend, but SEO certainly isn't free. You need to spend time on it. You need to focus on it. You need to do link building. You need to do it properly, and both have a cost and both have a balance, and both should be done in terms of considering a return on investment and considering what you're getting for it. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Jack, and Jack's going to talk from a PPC perspective of kind of the steps of which what we would take or what we suggest you take if you're fairly new to it, or even if you're doing it, you know, just giving you a bit of background in terms of the right questions to ask and to be thinking about whether you're doing it yourself or working with another agent. Obviously, we haven't covered so much about practical steps for organic, and that's a big subject in its own right, and maybe for a future webinar. But in the meantime, I shall pass you over to Jack to continue.
Thank you very much indeed, Adam. Very informative as always. So just to give you a bit of an introduction to me, my name is Jack. I am the commercial leader over at Raw. I've been working in digital marketing now for about 10 years, or almost 10 years, which makes me a slight dinosaur in the industry. But I'm going to talk to you about pay-per-click, and I wanted to give you some top tips as to how you would go about approaching it from a beginner perspective. I can understand that some of you perhaps run your own PPC campaigns at the moment. That's a conversation for a later date. But just to explain very briefly what pay-per-click is, it's when advertisers are paying for an advert click on Google, as Adam highlighted earlier. It's done by a cost per click perspective, but it's done based on keyword demand as well as quality score. So two areas that we're going to cover. And if you configure this correctly, it should facilitate a highly targeted lead flow, which you track through trackable events such as conversion tracking, which is another topic that we're going to cover. But hopefully this will give you some kind of idea as to how to do it yourself. or even help in regards to a conversation with an agency to help you. Now, there's not enough time to go through everything, but I'll try and cover as many topics as I possibly can. But I would urge you all to take Adam up on his offer about getting your market intelligence company report, because it's free and it will give you an idea as to what locations you're strong, what areas you perhaps could focus on. Just gives you a nice condensed understanding there. Right, so let's begin with setting out your objectives. So we're going to use our Block Management are us fake company that we made up, and I've provided some mock answers on the right-hand side for some of these topics. So firstly, you need to take a step back. You need to understand what it is you want to achieve from pay-per-click. So with our Block Management RS company, they want to generate more leads, more inbound leads, which is the main achievement or the main perspective for advertisers. But as you grow the PPC account, you can think about trying to just boost your brand in many different ways, including on the social platforms, as well as just increasing the general traffic and increasing the general visibility of your brand as well. Okay, so the next thing you need to look at and ask yourself is what services you want to promote. So again, with our Block Management RS company, they want to advertise their core offering, which is their block management services, and then maybe focus on some secondary services as well. But you want to make these services as specific as possible. Start really granular and then broaden out your horizons, because this will have an impact on the keyword selection moving forward. Then the third thing, we've covered this already. I know Adam has in regards to the geographies, but you need to think of the type of service, and the geographies tend to be the biggest influencers when it comes to building these PPC campaigns. So where do you want to target? How do you want to target? So with our Block Management RS company here, it's Birmingham, and they cover a 20-mile radius. So there's two ways in which they can go about doing that. They can set a 20-mile radius parameter around and just show ads to people within that 20-mile radius, or they could go down the route of having some keywords in there to do with Birmingham, so property management in Birmingham or estate management in Birmingham, but then cover the entirety of the UK. So you're targeting all parts of the UK. If people are interested in the Birmingham region, then they'll be able to find your ad as well. Then you need to ask yourself, what does success look like to you? So how many new leads you want, how many? Again, you need to then, after you've discussed that with yourself, you need to ask yourself what kind of price and what kind of budget you need to set. And this is really where people can lose sight of the bigger picture. You need to start thinking about your clientele and what the lifetime value of each client is. So then once you've worked that out, you can work out, well, how much you can spend on a particular lead, or how much you want to spend on a converted lead. And then you can work backwards and work a budget out that way. So a very simple, tangible example here is if you want to acquire 40 new leads within the next 30 days, and you don't want to pay any more than £40 per lead, you can work backwards from that. But like I said, making sure that you understand your client lifetime value is very important there as well. So we're then going to go into the keyword research. Once we've understood our objectives, again, looking at our Block Management RS company, every successful PPC campaign starts with good keyword research. So research into who your customers are, what locations they cover, as well as how they go about searching for your product, which I know Adam's touched upon in his market intel. Now, you can use the Google keyword tool for this, which is a free tool, which will give you an idea as to what keywords might be the best ones to target, as well as a couple of others that might be a very close variant to those keywords. But I would suggest you start asking the following questions. And again, we've got some answers on the right-hand side here for our Block Management RS company. So looking at your target audience. So most people will be looking for specifically what you offer, which will be around the block management keyword phrase in a particular location. However, as Adam alluded to earlier, others might be slightly less obvious. So such as the EICR certificate. So if people know they need to get that done, so I think it's going to be a legal requirement very soon. Could be a good way for people to engage with your brand and hopefully do some more business with you along the line. Looking at location again, we've touched upon that. I won't dwell upon that too much. But then also analysing your competition. and you'll need to understand what your competition are doing. Now, I think from the market intel perspective that Adam mentioned earlier, that's also a good way to understand what your competition are doing, both from a PPC and an SEO and a map listing perspective, to see where they're strong and what phrases they're using and keywords they might be using. So good to analyze what they're doing, and then see if there are any gaps that you can fill. And then perhaps the most important is you need to be very, very specific. I would start very specific with your keyword selection. So look for keywords that are further down the buying cycle. So as Adam mentioned earlier, you want to look for the stuff that has more intent. Such as, if we were to use an example here of the move block management companies, chances are if someone types move block management companies in, they're looking for a move block management company. And then you also need to start looking at the longer tail keywords, which kind of ties in with the specific keywords. So making sure that you're not being too vague. You don't want to go down the route of having keywords such as house management, because that can mean an array of different things. But something along the lines of block management for 5 properties could be a good avenue to go down. And then what you'll find with particular keywords like that is the competition is going to be a little less, which means that your cost per click is going to be less, but you might also get fewer searches on those keywords as well. And then looking at the local keywords, again, Adam has alluded to this quite a lot, but we've got a keyword tool that if you're a large block management company and you cover the entirety of the UK, it's going to take you a long time to put all of the locations in the UK into your PPC campaign. But we've got a tool that you can draw a polygon around the UK and it extracts all of the locations in the UK with search volume and just builds the campaign from that. So it's very automated from that perspective. So please get in touch if you're interested in doing that. And then perhaps most importantly as well, and what people might forget when building these campaigns, is looking at the negative keywords. So these are very similar to the way that you would farm for key terms and key phrases within your PPC account. You need to think of the ones that you don't want to be appearing for. Now, the example that I've got on the right-hand side here is block management is a keyword that I'm guessing a lot of you would want to appear for in your local area. However, if I was to look for a course on block management, or in fact, if I was in the job market and I was looking to get a job in block management, I might do a very similar search to what we have on the right-hand side. Now, the root keyword block management is there, but I've gone down a different route by saying I want to learn about block management, which isn't necessarily what you guys provide. So putting negative keywords around courses and jobs, just to make sure that all the irrelevancies are taken away, is very, very key there. So we move on to quality score. So quality score, very, very quickly, it's a score out of 10 that Google gives every single keyword that you have in your account, 10 being the best. Now you need to try and understand what the quality score means in the terms of it gives you an ad rank. It shows whereabouts on the page that you are going to rank. So the better the quality score, the less you are going to pay for a particular click. Also, the higher you're going to rank. So the more you concentrate on trying to get these up, the better it's going to be. There are 3 main drivers of this. One of them being the expected click-through rate, so the percentage of people that are clicking on your ad in comparison to the search volume. The ad relevance, so it's very important you make the ad relevant to the search itself. So if it's a block management company in Birmingham, you need to make sure that you've got that in the ad, and very similar to when they go through to the landing page as well. So you need to make sure you've got very content-rich stuff on the landing page to say that you are block managers in Birmingham or whatever locations that you guys cover. Now, this really is the difference between great PPC versus the average PPC, is making sure that these quality scores are as high as you possibly can, because in essence, you get more clicks for your budget. So how do you go about maximizing these scores? You want to put them in granular single keyword ad groups, or SKAGs. So these are just one keyword with 3 different ads, just to see which variant of ad is going to work best for that particular keyword, and then you can optimize on that. Making sure that the mobile performance and the speed of your mobile sites is really up level. You want to review all the ad text, so just making sure that you're putting in all the emotive language that's going to improve the click-through rate, and then in turn improve that quality score. Optimize those landing pages, so again, just looking at the speed and so on, but also understand the limitations. And one of the limitations on quality score especially is if you start to try and target your competitors, which you can do, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen. If you were to type in your company name or a competitor, maybe another competitor is trying to bid on them to win business. Now, because that's not relevant, Google say, well, we're going to allow you to bid on that because we want your money, but we're going to charge you a bit more to do that. So making sure you understand the limitations there as well. So the final couple of bits here, I just wanted to very briefly talk about the tracking purpose. So making sure that you understand the return on investment when you're alluding to the budget and trying to identify that. So you want to put some conversion tracking code on your website just to make sure that, like I said, you understand what you're getting back in terms of phone calls, in terms of form fills, if you've got a live chat feature. So how does that look like on your dashboard? So at the bottom of this particular search, you can see the Google Ads platform. So someone will type in block management near me, and then this will come up as an impression on your particular dashboard. And then once they click on one of the ads, so I think that should, lovely. So then you'll see a click that will be referred to that original search, as well as what the average cost per click on that search term was. And then you should go through to a landing page, which as a user, you'll go through to the landing page, and there will be a couple of different options on which that person can get in contact. So whether it be the phone number or indeed the form, to which you can see at the bottom here the conversions and the different conversion actions, which will highlight what the return is from the budget that you affix to these campaigns. So very, very important just to know what's coming back from these campaigns. So then finally, just to consider some advanced strategies. Now, I won't go into this in too much detail. This is perhaps a different session for us. But you want to consider some of the advanced techniques, and I'll talk very top level. So audience and remarketing. Remarketing, I'm sure you've all come across. If you were to visit any product or service on their website, and then you click off, and you might go onto your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed, and then miraculously, this company has appeared with an ad. So you can retarget and re-engage your audience, making sure that you're testing everything. That includes all the ad text, as well as optimizing on the landing page, and then targeting. So just understanding when the conversions are coming through on your particular account, or when the search volume is coming through. Just because you're a 9-to-5 business Monday to Friday doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be just running your ads during those times. So just adjusting bids every now and again. So let's say on Monday morning, we can see that there's an influx of traffic, also an influx of leads. Perhaps we want to up the bids during Monday morning and reduce it during the times of the afternoon, because then what you're doing is you're condensing down your budget and just specifically putting it into the areas in which you know are churning out the best results. So a couple of areas there, but we can run through that in a different session. So that's pretty much a very, very quick insight into what pay-per-click is. Hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavor as to a couple of things to consider, but more than happy to have a detailed conversation with anyone else in terms of the advanced activities. But I'll hand back to Adam. So thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, I just wanted to finish really. Thank you, Jack. That was really insightful, really interesting. I just wanted to finish really by saying if anybody wants to get in touch and continue this conversation, we're really keen to do so. If you want your company report, if you want some URLs to test, or if you want just some general advice or insight, please do get in touch. But I know we've overrun a bit, so I will stop now and hand back to James and see if there's any questions.
Cheers. Thanks for that, Adam. Thanks for that, Jack. That was really interesting. Such a difficult topic to condense into such a short amount of time as well. But clearly the audience have been finding it riveting stuff. So we've got, I think, 99.5% of the audience is still glued to their screens. So obviously a very good sign, and questions have been coming in thick and fast. So whilst the webinar is over, we're just going to, if you stick with us, if you've got the free time, I'm going to pick out a few questions for our guests to answer. There's a few here. So would PPC be better for a larger block management company? How do small firms make this work for them?
I'll probably take that one. It's a good question, and it's a question we get asked a lot. And we do PPC for a lot of different sizes of companies. So we do it really varies, like from really small independents to large sort of big regional companies. And I suppose the answer is that it's a pretty level playing field. Like the advantage to the small company is they can come in and immediately start bidding against the larger company and start appearing, and perhaps they will need to be a bit more selective in terms of where they spend their money and being a bit more careful and targeted. But that's essentially what a small business's business model should be anyway. You should be focusing on that area, and Google do reward you for your relevance. So if you're really highly relevant for that particular area, you will pay less than the bigger competitor. And there's a big example in the property sector where purple bricks are just everywhere for every search, and we're constantly up against them. And for their sin, I mean, they're quite good in terms of where they cover, but the strategy when we're dealing with someone like that is you can definitely beat them if you're more relevant. You also know when to go up against them or when not to. Sometimes it's you're better off using money elsewhere. But I mean, the answer is it's perfect for both, really. If you're a small company, you can use it to access potential leads pretty quickly. But if you're a bigger company and you've got a bigger budget, there's obviously a big potential to cover quite a large area. So it's definitely relevant for all. I don't know if you've got anything further to add on that, Jack.
No, I think you pretty much covered it.
Fantastic. There's a few questions here around cost and budget. How much do you think an average PPC campaign would cost for block management?
Oof. I think I'll probably try and take on that question. It's how long is a piece of string? It's a really tough question. It really all depends on the areas in which you target and the different services in which you target. But if you're going to try and do it yourself, you can start with a very limited budget of perhaps around 200 quid a month, as long as it's a relatively small condensed area. But if you want to do it properly at scale and you want to try and include some of the other secondary services, as well as the primary stuff, and you cover a larger area, let's say it's half of the UK, then you're probably looking at something close to 800 to 1,000, I would think. But all of these things, especially around cost, it's very transparent and clear with the return. But
I think just to add on that, like with the cost side of things, the great thing about PPC, which I like about it, is it is so trackable. So whilst the cost may seem quite high to start with, you can very clearly see what you're getting back for it. So you can see what the result is in terms of the leads that are coming in. And we do a lot of work again on the property side, where we sit down with the marketing directors that we work with, and we send them a list of all the leads that we provided, and they can then go through and see what actually happened in terms of finite actions at the end and work out what their return on investment is. And in some respect, it doesn't really matter how much you're paying, as long as you're getting back more than what you're paying. And that's the thing to keep monitoring and watching carefully.
Brilliant. I think we've got time for maybe just one more. So one person has asked, how can I see what my competitors are doing?
I guess that's probably
in terms of paid search.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's related to kind of what I went through. I mean, very simply, you can carry out a few searches and see what's going on and see who's there and take notice. That's the first step, really. If you want to be a bit more sophisticated, you can use some of these online tools to like the Ahrefs and stuff are very good at seeing what's going on. Or I mean, it's an obvious steer, but you get in touch with us in terms of the company report, and what that company report does, it shows you who's advertising near you and what your competitors are doing. And, that should be quite useful in terms of insight for that. But I mean, at a very basic level, just carry out some searches and see what's going on. Spreadsheet, yeah. There's nothing wrong with a spreadsheet. We still use plenty of them.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for that, guys. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for. Very sorry if we didn't get around to answering any of your questions, but we will be emailing all of you a recording of the webinar along with presentation materials. There's also going to be a very short survey that should pop up at the end of this. Please do take a minute to respond to that. It really helps us kind of understand what we're doing right, what you would like to see more of in the future. You can also email either us, Fixflow, or Raw with any follow-up questions you might have. We do have some great block management webinars still to come throughout the year. So the next up, I think, is quarterly compliance updates for block managers of 2021. Presented by the fantastic Cassandra Zanelli, CEO and solicitor of property management legal services. So registration for that, I think, is going to open in the next couple of weeks. So if you follow us on social media, then you should get notified of that as soon as that drops. And finally, one last shameless bit of self-promotion. Please do subscribe to our Fixflow YouTube channel. This and many other webinars make their way there. So it's just a great way to kind of catch up on any that you might have missed, that you might find interesting. And you can also find them on our website as well, fixedflow.com/webinars. So thank you again to our speakers, Adam and Jack. They've been utterly brilliant. I personally have worked with many digital marketing agencies, but Raw, as you've seen, is really quite unique in how they run their campaigns, which is immensely valuable. And a big thank you, obviously, to you, the attendees. We really do appreciate the phenomenal responses we continue to get for doing these webinars. And as a result, we plan on continuing to run webinars throughout the year. So thank you again. Thanks again, Adam and Jack, and see you all soon.